I think that was the one that really,
broke his spirit.
yeah, because he should have destroyed Coleman.
So Shamrock beat Severn. Now, does that get everybody talking in the NWA, like board of trustees? That
No,
maybe
they
switch
they
it
were a
off?
little disappointed and stuff, but we looked at it that it was basically the demographics are the same for Ultimate Fighting Wrestling, but I think the Ultimate Fight fans are a little more intelligent and realized that it wasn't a work. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically that kind of salvaged it for us. But like Dan wound up with the WWF, and he had a lot of credibility and become popular.
Then in one of Gilbert Memorials, you're doing Dan Severn versus Dory Funk.
Right.
Right. And I guess from what I gathered, the Funks offered Severn like $5,000.
Yeah.
Marty and Dory Funk offered Severn like $5,000 to
They
drop
offered
the
me
strap.
$5,000 to get Dan to drop the strap, and it just never panned out. And I love Dory Funk. Dory Funk is a great guy, but and she'll see this tape and she can go fuck herself for all I care. His wife Marty is the biggest pain in the fucking ass, and I don't care. I feel she has ruined his career. And everybody will tell you that. She's just a royal pain in the nuts. And she disrupted that, Gilbert, and she disrupted the one after that, and I never had him back afterwards. She just he knew we were having a locker room meeting at 7 o'clock. I told them about it. I wanted him there at 7 o'clock because it was important. He didn't show up till 8:30, and I kept calling his room, and they said they'd be right down. He never came down. He was there, hired and paid to sign autographs and do Polaroids. He didn't do one. Never showed up, even though he was there. And it's all her influence, and she's basically killed his career in Japan and ruined everything. That's why he don't have the dojo deal with the WWF, is because of her shenanigans, She's a goof. She's a fucking idiot. So I love you, Marty.
So the Funks offered you $5,000
Yeah.
to have Severn drop the
Yeah.
strap.
Yeah.
What was Severn's thoughts on?
Well, Stan didn't know they offered me $5,000. I just, first of all, I knew she wasn't going to pay the money because she's an old wrestling con to begin with. But the reason I wanted Dan to drop the belt was because he was supposed to go with ECW. And that's what it was. And I said, listen, I know you're talking with them now. You didn't tell me about it. I thought we were, better than that. I said, I want you to drop the strap to me. He wouldn't do it.
What are your some fondest memories of working with Severn?
The thing I liked about Dan is, it's funny. My wife, my ex-wife, she never really liked anybody in wrestling, but Dan was one of the few guys she really liked when he come to the house. He would come to the house. He was just like a regular person. He wasn't, one of the boys, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? And he was down to earth. I'd done stuff with him beside wrestling. He used to come to the house. I used to hang out with him. He was just a great guy. We had a lot of good times together, went a lot of places, and we always had fun. And we had fun ribbing and getting the digs in on Phyllis Lee, but it was pretty. I loved good times with Dan. I guess he was like a great guy. It was like being around these guys. You know what I'm saying? Just like a regular person.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he had that star status and that celebrity thing about him, he was just a down-to-earth person. He was very humble.
One of the guys who's probably stuck by you through thick and thin the entire time was Jim Cornette.
Right.
Earlier on, you explained that you met him in like 84, 85
Right.
during the Crockett years. How did your relationship grow? Or
Well, the thing was with Jimmy. Jimmy was a fan before he was a promoter or a wrestler or a manager, so he basically had that sincerity about him where he was a person, and he knew I was a fan, and we just hit it off good. I met him through a third party that was friends with him. We got talking, and we just hit it off good, and ever since then we've been best friends. We've ate a lot of food and traveled a lot of places, and Jimmy's just a brilliant mind, and always he took care of me when he went to the WWF, and he's been a loyal friend ever since, and I've been loyal to him ever since.
Then Cornette gets the permission to do the NWA angle.
Right.
In the WWF, you come out, you do the the title.
Right.
You finally make it to Raw.
Yeah, big net at Raw.
Do you think that angle helped or hurt the NWA?
I think it helped it, and they could have continued it and done something with it, but I think Vince Russo was the guy that like fucked everything up with it, you know? That's basically what happened. I think they got a lot of mileage out of that, especially with Severn, and they had Jarrett involved with it, and the Rock and Roll Express, and it was on an upward thing, you know?
What were their? I know the angle got scrapped, but you know, like probably some of the insides. What were they to evolve the angle into? You know, who else were they to tie in, or weren't any of those ideas laid out for that?
Well, basically, it was just they wanted to do stuff with Severn and Wyndham and Jarrett, all the old NWA guys.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy had a good program for it, but unfortunately, I guess Russo kept nagging Vince McMahon about it, and they wound up killing it because Vince was all for it, and a lot of the older guys in the office were for it. Like Briscoe, he's an old NWA guy, and they all were open arms to it.
Your relationship with Cornette still fine?
Still fine. I haven't talked to him in a long time, and I get a Christmas card from him every year, and Dennis, no heat. I've just been busy. Jimmy right now, he's just a very busy guy right now. I mean, you know, I think you would think he's doing less now than when he was with the WWF, but evidently he's not. And I'll get a call from him one of these days. Jimmy's the best.
NWA starts to pick up. They're trying to,
Right.
from the WWF angle,
Right.
they're trying to explode it, bring in more territories. I
Right.
think they're maybe pushing 50 different independent companies.
Right. We got more members out of that too.
A lot of information went between the sheets where a lot of people are saying it's just a bunch of promoters that have no clue. That's what the NWA has become. I mean, what were your insights on it? Yeah, you're gaining membership, but is it becoming a tight-knit unit, or is it just collecting dues from other promoters who think they're gonna?
I still feel to this day Brody kind of ruined it, because if you look at the board of directors, with the exception of Bill Barons, Ernie Todd, and Jim Miller, all the rest of them are either stooges for Brody or Fred Rubenstein. Like Slim Balcom, he's on the board of directors because him and Brody had a couple private deals pending. Ernie Todd's on the board of directors, and he should be on there. Ernie bailed out Brody with the police and Cherry Hill. There was an incident with that where we had to come up with $3,000, and Ernie Todd ended it up, and Jimmy and Brody lobbied to put him on the board, which was a good move because Ernie Todd was a Canadian. He was one of our Canadian members, and I felt we should have had a Canadian on the board anyway. So Ernie got on, which I'm glad. And Senator Inoki, I mean, him and Brody and Inoki's kid are so far up each other's ass that Inoki don't give a shit or even know what the hell's going on. And anytime Brody asks them to vote on something, they do it, And it's because they got private deals going on. So everybody on the board, between Brody, Slim Balcom, Inoki, and Rick O'Brien, who's a fucking village idiot, Brody gets anything he wants, so it's hard to get shit passed by the board. And he's got, in order for the NWA to be successful, and they have to get a new board, let Brody just be the head paperwork stooge, and get shit going, because when you look at it now, if you look at their membership, with the exception of a couple of promoters, they're all fucking idiots. I mean, Bill Barons is the only one that's got anything really going. Brody started his Florida thing again, and they got a hurricane because he promoted more than one show in a fucking year. And he's a fucking idiot. I mean, he's a great guy. I mean, he's a good detail man, but when it comes to wrestling, he don't know his dick from his ass. And there ain't too many guys that are members that have anything on the ball. Some of the better members they got rid of was me, Doug Gilbert, and Greg Price. And like Bill Barons has a saying, I was the best member ever in the NWA, and I was the worst, and it's the truth, because I just done shit that, just to do it, They get us publicity. Now there's not. It's dead. It's like, look at NWA Jersey. Their shows are shitty. I'm sure these guys been to some of them. I mean, the shows are the shits. They have no talent. They have nothing going on from controversial. They don't do nothing to generate any good publicity. Like, who gives a shit about fat fuck Gino Moore and his lasagna eating contest? I mean, that's real. That's like one of the top 10 events. And vote that in your newsletters at the end. Those guys get sheets. Top 10 events of the year. The fucking lasagna eating contest. That's real. It's real fucking good. You know.
I guess during the 50th anniversary show, which you had a lot of insight, help putting it together. Howard Brody complimenting you on giving the NWA new life, and he said even though some of your tactics were quote unquote questionable.
They always are.
Like, how did you react to those remarks where he's complimenting you?
Well, it's the truth.
Stabbing you in the back in front of everybody.
It's the truth, you know. I'm very controversial and questionable, and you know, who gives a fuck what he thinks? You know, if I gave a fuck what he thought, I'd be still in the NWA. You know.
A little bit before this, you get with Todd Gordon.
Right.
You guys do the ECW Invasion Annual.
Right.
What were your thoughts putting that together, and what was the...
Well, I actually thought it was going to work, but then Todd went a little haywire. And see, I had always realized this, and I don't know why I went through it that angle. I thought that it would put a punch into the promotion. But see, you got to remember something. ECW is a magical promotion. Like, you know, you got to give Paul Heyman his due. He's probably creative-wise, whether he done it with mirrors and voodoo or whatever the hell else he uses, he took a small company and turned them into the number 3 company in the country, and he still has them going. I mean, love him or hate him, you got to give him credit for that, because no one's been able to. I mean, he's had longevity, he's had all these years where he kept the promotion afloat, and they're on TV, and the thing is this, is that I had always realized that if you take an ECW guy out of ECW and put him on your show, okay, you're not going to draw, because it's not the entire total package. It's not ECW. And proof of that is I brought Sabu in a few times. I mean, the attendance was good, but you would think it would have been better. Like one time I brought Sandman in, you know, and he's a fucking idiot too, and I hope he sees this tape, fucking drunk. I brought Sandman in for a show, you know, to do this NWA angle, this ECW angle, and for an appearance to sign autographs. It was farewell to the Sandman party. He sold 25 Polaroids, that was it. I mean, he didn't draw shit, because once they leave there, they don't mean shit. And all these promoters that come in their pants, oh wow, I'm bringing Steve Carino in, I'm bringing Sabu in, and other guys for the show, Tommy Dreamer. They are the greatest stars in the world, as long as they stay in there. But once they leave there, people would rather buy a ticket to see their whole thing than to see a great guy like Tommy. I mean, Tommy Dreamer's a great star, and Sabu and Steve Carino. I love Steve Carino, you know. But when you bring them outside of that promotion, they don't draw a dick. You know, it's just because no one wants to see him outside of ECW. You know what I mean? So that's big. And so I should have realized that when we're bringing guys like Brian Lee and the Pitbulls and Public Enemy and I mean, Teddy and Johnny were a draw no matter what, but like they were probably the best draw out of any of them to leave that promotion and go independent. They drew better than anybody. But I should have realized that, you know, Kimona, and they weren't going to draw outside of the ECW, you know, buildings and TV and stuff.
So for the Invasion Angle, did Gordon put up all the money, or did you put up the money? To do
I paid the guys. That was it. Now Gordon was going around telling everybody I was paying him $1,500 a show, which I fucking wouldn't even pay Sid that. You know what I'm saying? So let him have his little fantasy and tell everybody that, you know, I'm not the biggest payoff guy in the world, so everybody knows that's not true. You know.
And I guess all of it finally came to an end at the 50th anniversary show,
yeah.
where you decided this angle's going nowhere.
We're going to kill it. He took offense to it, and I had to actually hold Doug Gilbert back, because Doug Gilbert was going to actually beat the shit out of him. Because Doug got tired of shit, and Doug wanted to kill it, and he felt that, like, you know, Gordon was shitting on his brother, and It was going nowhere. And he says, Dennis, we got to kill this. And then he throwing us a fucking dime. And I said, I know, let's just kill it tonight. And we wanted to change it to kill it, and he didn't want to do it. And he went storming out of there all mad. Little spoiled cunt.
Looking back on that angle, what do you think? Is there any one thing you could have done to maybe make it work, or is just
not do it?
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Just be honest. Let's talk a lot about Eddie Gilbert.
Right. Oh yeah.
You and Eddie became friends, I guess, when he was in.
First time I met Eddie Gilbert, the very real first time I met him was in Philadelphia, and I went up to him to talk to him, and he was kind of like a dick to me, and it was just like we didn't hit it off at all the very first time. So I thought, see, what I had found out was WCW was trying to fuck him, and he wasn't in too happy of a mood. See, Eddie Gilbert, the thing I say about Eddie Gilbert and Terry Funk and Doug Gilbert, Doug's just a chip off the old block. You know, the fruit don't fall far from the tree type thing. Their guys, all three of them are home run hitters. They get the bat, they hit a home run. But the problem is, as they round second base, they take off in the left field. So that's, you know, you attribute it to that. They're just great guys. But I then went down to Memphis one time to do something with Jerry Lawler. And I was in the locker room or something, Eddie Gilbert was there, and I kind of was like standoffish against him, because last time I was with him, he wasn't too cool. And someone comes, hey, this is Eddie Gilbert, this is Dennis, and he knew all about me, and I said, well, I say, hey, so you're not going to treat me like a jerk off this time, are you? He goes, what do you mean? I told him, he explained what had happened, and we went out to a restaurant that day, and we sat there for like 4 hours just bullshitting, and after that, me and him became best of friends. I mean, I was the first guy to bring him in this area, and you know, me and him could just sit there for hours and just talk wrestling, and he was a brilliant mind. He was the best. I mean, you know, everything Paul Heyman knows and was taught was because he went on the road with Eddie Gilbert for years, and Eddie Gilbert taught him everything. And Paul even tell you that. Eddie was his mentor. And I can remember all the times when Eddie moved up to Philly here. I got him that job with Gordon. At the time, me and Gordon done a joint show together, and he knew Eddie Gilbert was my guy, and he said, listen, do you mind if I hire him as a booker? So I went to Eddie Gilbert. I said, listen, he's going to hire as a booker. He's getting on Sports Channel, but he wants you to move up here. I said, what kind of money would it take to get you up here? And he gave me one figure, and I said, let's go for more than that. I think we'll go for more than that. And he did. And ever since that, Eddie was like, you know, indebted to me. Like, he couldn't believe the deal. I got him the deal. And we became best friends. We just go to Korean barbecue and sit there for hours and just, we hung out together, went to movies. We were just like best friends, you know. And Eddie marched to the beat of a different drummer. But, you know, if you knew Eddie and you knew his flat sides, you didn't have a problem with him. It was the guys, the promoters, and the bookers, and the guys that didn't know the psychology of Eddie Gilbert that had problems with him.
What's your most favorite memory of Eddie?
Greatest time ever I had with Eddie Gilbert was, and this is like one of the best times ever. We had a show up in Wayne, New Jersey. It was the first time anybody in the United States used Sabu, and I used it. And I brought him up to Wayne, New Jersey to work Candido. And I think I had Terry Funk on the show. Yeah, Terry Funk. It was the first Eddie Gilbert Terry Funk match ever. All the times they worked territories together, they never worked a singles match ever. So they were looking forward. So we went to the airport. I had my stooge Gino Moore carting us around. It was me, Eddie Gilbert, Terry Funk, Brian Hildebrand, John Bailey. Amy was with us. Amy Lee, Terry Funk, and we had like Frank Chill. We had 8 of us crammed in a van, and it was just the greatest time ever. That when I dropped them off at the airport the next morning, 5 o'clock, I don't know why it took us 8 hours to get to a 2-hour town, and we got drunk and shit. Well, I don't drink, but you know, when I got home that morning, like 5 or 6 in the morning, I said to my wife, I said, "I tell you what," I said, "if I don't wake up, I had the greatest time ever in my life last night. It was just with Terry and Eddie and Hildebrand. We just had a great time. One thing that was pretty funny was I was sitting there next to Terry Funk in the van. There was a beer cooler between the two of us, and Amy Lee was sitting in the front seat. And she was passed out from too many Blue Hawaiians. So a song come on by Patsy Cline called "Crazy," and he goes, "Hey, Carluzo, she's dead." I said, "She ain't dead. She's drunk. She's fine." He said, "She's dead, I'm telling you." I said, "No, she ain't." So I slapped her in the head in the ear. You know. I said, "See, she's just drunk." He goes, "She's dead." I said, "She ain't fucking dead. What's your problem?" So what happened was he leaned across the seat and started choking me, smacking me around. I didn't know he was talking about Patsy Cline. I thought he was talking about Amy Lee. And he smacked me the fuck over his van. So I realized he was talking about Patsy Cline. He's like fucking choking me and like, you know, smacking me around and shit. And I said, "Damn." I said, "You know, Terry, what the fuck, you know?" But it was just like one of the greatest times I've ever had. I mean, you know, it was just a great time. That was probably one of my greatest times ever on the road. Was with them guys.
You helped Eddie get in to work for Todd.
Right.
To be the booker.
Right.
And I guess you stayed in contact with him that whole time.
Oh, the whole time. We just go out 3-4 times a week. He'd tell me what Todd was up to, and I'd tell him what I was up to, and he'd try to, you know.
Find a medium.
Yeah, he'd laugh and tell me what to do and what not to do to make it work, you know. It was just funny shit.
What led to his demise with Gordon, do you feel?
Well, what had happened, Todd let Paul Heyman and I believe Kevin Sullivan and guys like that get to his ear. You know what I'm saying? And they basically started to cause the demise of Eddie Gilbert with ECW because Heyman, who was Gilbert's best friend, was going behind Gilbert's back and saying, "Todd, you got to do this, you got to do that," and fucking Kevin Sullivan's trying to fuck Eddie at his job, and Heyman's trying to fuck Eddie at a job, and everybody's trying to fuck everybody. So they went to Gordon behind Doug's back, and that's just because you hear so much about somebody, bad shit all the time, you're going to start thinking that it is true. And Gordon should have just, like, you know, stuck with Eddie. I mean, look at the success Paul has, but I think Eddie could eventually have gotten that same success because I'm talking to Eddie. He was going to do a lot of that real hardcore shit eventually because Gordon kept saying, "Oh, we're not going to do what Joel Goodhart did." But Eddie knew he was going to have to do that to get the crowds in there. And then they got rid of Eddie, and that was it, you know.
Eddie leaves, and I guess then he comes to you, or he helps run your stuff for a little bit?
Well, no. My situation with Eddie was I would always bring him in to work independent shots for me anyway. And then when he would come in early and we'd sit down and map out. So he really did kind of help me with angles and stuff like that. But after the ECW thing, that really hurt him bad, and he kind of like disappeared. He wasn't doing much. Then I had the NWA World Championship tournament, and I brought him in for that, and he was at top physical condition at the time. I mean, you know, he worked with pins in his fingers and a cast. I mean, he was, you know, his fingers were broken. He went out there and worked his ass off. And then I was going to Jim Cornette all the time and saying, "Jim, he's at the peak of his game right now. Why don't you bring him in and use him just one time? Do it for me for old time's sake." I said, "The guy's got shit going good for him now." And he said, "I don't know, I don't want to do it, you know, blah, 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 you know, the history, and just, you know." I said, "Look, Jimmy, I'm telling you, he's fucking great right now." I said, "Give him for me, just bring him in one TV taping and see how he goes." Well, he brought him in and Kane, Glenn Jacobs as a Unabomber. And it just started to tear the place apart. It was fucking great. Eddie done great interviews. He was showing up all the time. He was doing shit. So I was so glad that it worked out because I recommended Jimmy to use him. So I called Eddie Gilbert up. And I said, "Listen, I'm coming down to Knoxville, this big show Cornette's having. I want to see you down there. We'll hang out. I'm glad you're doing good." So I come down to Knoxville, and Gilbert ain't there. I asked him, I said, where the fuck's Eddie at? And he said, well, he went to Puerto Rico to be the booker. I said, oh man, I can't believe this. I can't. You know, I called his father. I said, Tommy, what the fuck? I said, you know, he said, Dad's like, I don't know what to tell you. He says, he's in Puerto Rico. You know, and then after that, I think I talked to him one time after that when he was in Puerto Rico, and he apologized for missing, you know, and he just had to do this move because, you know, it was just something he had to do. And then after that, he just died, and that was the last I ever heard from him.
How did you get word of his death?
Well, a lot of people I know went down to Baltimore for a show at WCW, and I had heard someone called me up at the house and he said, Dennis, he said, check this out. I hate to tell you this, but he said, I think Eddie Gilbert's dead. I said, get the hell out, really? So I checked it out and found out it was true. And then a lot of people heard about it in Baltimore that night. When I got back late that night from the show, were calling me. I already known about it. And I tried calling his mother and father and shit to find out what was going on, and they were really. And then I went down to the funeral with Terry Funk. Me and him went down together. And it was the most incredible funeral I ever went to in my life. It was unbelievable. Like, you know, it was just incredible. All the people were there, and you know, they had like a funeral procession from the funeral parlor to the church. I mean, it was on foot, you know, and Terry Funk was like leading the whole crowd, and it was just like, you know, he was like the head honorary pallbearer or something, but he didn't have to carry the thing. And Lawler was there, and Christopher, and everybody that ever worked in Memphis, pretty much. You know, it was like a who's who of wrestling.
After that, where did you get the idea to do the memorial show? Really, before then there was nothing, and now it's like...
I know, I'd never done memorial shows until I'd done that one. Did you notice that?
I'm giving you credit.
Yeah, I done that. Well, what had happened was his mom had a thing in a newsletter that she was trying to start a scholarship fund for Eddie down at Lexington High School in Tennessee, and she was looking for donations. So I called her up and I just threw the idea bar. I said, Peggy, let's do a memorial up here. Eddie was more popular in this area than anywhere. He was just as popular up here as he was down in... Matter of fact, he was probably more popular up here than he was in Memphis. And they thought it was a good idea. It was a great idea. And the first one we had was at the in Cherry Hill, but unfortunately we got like about 18 inches of snow. And still turned out to be a big money maker for the scholarship fund because people bought tickets that didn't come, and we had ads and all kinds of stuff. And the thing that was great about it was I was standing there and I had heat with Cactus Jack, major heat, because I was fucking with ECW at the time on a continual regular basis, where I was actually having shows canceled on them, you know. But I could call, you know, and I was standing there and I'm talking on the microphone. I look over and Cactus Jack comes walking in. And he comes up to me and we got talking. I said, man, is the heat over? And shit. He says, yeah. He says, you know, and he was going with the WWF at the time, and he showed up, and Laura was there, and Cornette, and everybody could think of was there. It was a great time, and that we continued every year. The mistake I made last year, I had it down in Vineland, and you know, I was like, that's the worst place to do anything. I'm going to do another one in the fall, I think, but I'm just going to have the show. I'm not going to have the luncheon or the convention or any of that shit.
What are some of your fondest memories of? We'll just do it year by year. The first one, the first Gilbert Memorial. Like, how easy, or were there any difficulties bringing all the different guys in?
No, it's really, after you do this shit for so long, it's like a science. You just pick up the phone, you call the guy, you book him, you tell him you want to pay him, tell him what it's for, and ask him what city he's flying out of. Then all you got to do after that is call the airline, get the ticket. It's like it's a no-brainer.
But I mean, you had some guys there that had bad blood with Eddie. You know, like you
said.
The
only person there that had bad blood with Eddie was Lawler. But Jerry was professional enough and honest enough to realize that Gilbert made him money down there. And he come up and he gave a good tribute to him, and it was fine. I didn't really have anybody there with any controversy or problems. You know, there was problems with me and Cactus Jack at the time.
How did that stem?
From me getting shows canceled for ECW, like, you know, calling up buildings and telling them I was like special interest groups that were offended by the type of product, you know. We would have a protest out there, you know, like the Nation of Islam and the Southern Baptist Leadership Council and shit, you know, fake you know, there's some funny shit though, you know.
How many times did you do that?
About 4 or 5. And Cactus come in, so I felt bad for him because he had a family and was trying to make money. And I had a great batting average going. They come in one weekend for 3 shows, and at the last minute I had 2 of them canceled. And he called me up cursing at me on the phone and shit, and acting like I was the heel, you know. I had a big fight with him on the phone. I told him I was going to fucking shoot him, and that was the last, you know.
So everybody knew that you were behind it.
Yeah.
There was
You know, it was funny you mentioned it. The very first benefit show ever I did, the one that really, I got all the glitches and learned how to do it, and it was the most successful one, was the Tom Robinson Memorial. Not Memorial, the Tom Robinson benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a guy that had some kind of rare disease that nobody knew what it was, and he went from like 170 pounds down to 85 pounds. He was actually dying, and he wasn't getting his medical bills paid. So I threw this benefit over at this Catholic high school in Pennsylvania, and if you remember, it was probably one of the greatest independent shows ever because I had Funk. I had the Midnights against Funk and Cactus Jack, but somehow Bobby Eaton got hurt, so I had Eddie Gilbert replace him, and I had Jerry Lawler there was Jerry Lawler against Bob Backlund? Who was it? I had Lawler on the show, which is a great card, I can't remember, but that was the very first benefit that was ever done for anybody in wrestling, like a show to help someone. I mean, you have shows for cancer and cops and environment and shit like that, but this was the first one to help somebody that was actually known and well liked in the wrestling business. And after that, I started doing the Eddie Gilbert ones, you know.
Mm-hmm. Talk about how you tried to basically get ECW out of business by canceling shows.
Right.
What was your main drive?
Well, it was just the idea that they basically started all this shit because I had some good sponsors and buildings in Pennsylvania. And every time I would want to run over there or do something over there, he acted like he was the emperor of Pennsylvania. And he tried fucking with me over there. But his problem was he's a super flyweight and I'm a super heavyweight when it comes to fucking with people. You know, and he didn't realize that. You know? So the more he got my ass up in the air, the more shit I did to him, you know?
What's 2 or 3 of your top stories of fucking with them? Fondest memories?
I actually had a building canceled on him down in Mississippi somewhere. I called up and I was the head of the Southern Christian some bullshit group. I had a major protest playing with 4,000 marchers. And the best one was Cheney State, when I called up as the NAACP and had that canceled. Right, but they were like, you know, 2 of the, there was just a bunch of them, you know?
Anything else other than like trying to get their shows canceled? Working with trying to get them kicked off TV?
You know what? The TV thing, I'm trying to remember what happened with that. That wasn't me that really tried to get them kicked off. I think it was Gino Moore that tried that, to have them get kicked off of TV. He was the one that called Sports Channel and actually had that close. But, you know, it's bullshit, you know. Gino was a minor leaguer, so, you know, he had enough. You should have let me handle it. I would have had him off of TV. Yeah, just remember that stuff. That stuff, when you bring it back, it brings back fond memories of fucking with ECW, you know. But they almost got, Gino almost got them actually canceled off of TV. Hey, let's take a break, all right?
Yep.
This.
Perfect. One of the Gilbert memorials, I guess probably the most sentimental moment is when Buddy Landell broke down. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, my thoughts? I love Buddy Landell, but Buddy Landell's so full of bullshit. It's fucking incredible. He just, he did like Eddie and he loved Eddie and he broke down, but sometimes, I don't know whether it's the natural breakdown or it's the chemicals, you know what I'm saying? But Buddy had a falling out with him. I'd like to bring him back because Buddy's, you know, Buddy's the biggest fucking con in wrestling, but I love the guy. I mean, nothing, I had no ill feelings for Buddy Lindell, other than the fact that he's a fucking con man and a liar, and he hides behind the Lord when he does it.
Being involved in the business, you had a Pennsylvania license, state of Pennsylvania, you need a wrestling license to run shows. I guess probably one of your favorite moments was the Angel ran the Rock and Wrestling show.
Oh, jeez.
Go over that story.
That was the, when I tell people about this, they do not believe it happened, but for the 300 or 400 people who were there that seen it, there's a tape floating around somewhere. I got to get off a guy named Jim Morianos. He used to do a lot of taping for wrestling. Well, Cosmic Commander calls up and asks me if he can use my license to an Angel doing a show at the Northern Liberties Rec Center. So I figured, what the hell, based on their track record there, I'll probably have 15, 20 people. Well, I pull up to the place. I see motorcycles outside, I could not believe what I seen when I went inside. The place was packed. I mean, it was packed with bikers, skinheads, Nazis, punk rockers. If you took the 350 people in there that night and you put them on a football field and you had them take on the entire ECW arena, you know, which is like one big, one big accumulation of welfare recipients, and you had them have a fight, these guys would have kicked 1,500 people's asses. I mean, they were nuts. Matter of fact, I was outside. They actually broke a tree that was planted in the ground. They actually broke it, these bikers. Well, they're outside drinking beer that they had in the cooler. And the show's getting ready to start, and there's a sign on the door, no beer, no drugs, no whatever. So I start loading the cooler back up. Karen says, fellas, I says, I'm the promoter here. I said, you can't bring alcohol in the building. And he says, well, how about I take every one of these bottles and start shoving them up your fucking ass? I said, well, enjoy the show, you know? So I went inside, and I could not believe it was like going into fucking hell. They had punk rock and wrestling. The funny part was the Cosmic Commander, when he come out to his match, he managed this little blonde-haired guy done a fag gimmick, that if you had shut your eyes, you would think Hulk Hogan entered the building. I mean, I never heard anybody with a bigger pop in my life. I don't know if anybody remembers that. But it was just the craziest thing ever in my life I heard. There's a guy up on stage, and when I tell people the story, they do not believe it. His hair was dyed like this fluorescent fucking red color. And he had his underarm hair dyed the same way. Well, he's standing there singing, and all of a sudden he drops his pants. And the hair on his nuts was the same color as the hair on his head and his shoulders. And I couldn't believe it. I said, this guy's a fucking freak. Well, that's all, you know. I was thinking, even I was amazed and shocked. I mean, I couldn't believe this was going on. All of a sudden, while he's singing, some guy gets up on the stage and starts blowing right on the stage. This was in between the wrestling matches. And I'm looking, and I said, this isn't happening. I was like, on a flashback or some shit. Then a girl jumps up on the stage, and her head's shaven all the way around in a circle. And she's got a crown of thorns tattooed where the head was shaved. She takes off her clothes, lays down on the stage, and another girl jumps up on the stage and is naked, and they start eating each other, for lack of a better term. I just could not believe it. Was the biggest freak show. And all of a sudden, at the end of the night, I grabbed my kid and I said, let's get the hell out of here. We go outside and we sit across the street in my car. There's these 40 riot police cars pulled up. And they went inside. It's the biggest riot broke out ever. Luckily, only one kid got hurt and wasn't serious. But I mean, it was the biggest fight and brawl. And matter of fact, Jim Morianos, who was filming the event, I got to get the tape of him sometime. They actually went up, and he's harmless as a fly. I mean, he just sits there, he don't bother anybody. They actually beat the shit out of him and busted up some of his equipment. That's how crazy it was. It was just the most wildest thing I've ever seen. That was like the biggest show Angel ever done, her with Cosmic Commander. Incredible.
What are some fond memories of Angel that you have?
I knew Angel since she was a little kid. Angel. She's just, I like her a lot. I mean, down to earth. She's a great girl. Like when my mother passed away, she'd call me up and talk to me, and I always liked Angel. She's just, me and her had controversy, but we've always remained friends. Her heart was always in the right place, but her mind wasn't. There's probably a zillion stories out there you can tell about her, but leave them where they're at.
You're doing basically a bunch of sold shows. I guess you went to 8 towns in Pennsylvania, like Tower City.
Right. Well, that was one of my greatest accomplishments, because I did not only, how I got that town was me and the biggest scumbag in professional wrestling, bar none. I mean, maybe you can put Gino, in my opinion, you can probably put Gino Moore in the same category as this guy, was Tom Casati. Me and him stole that town from WCW because they wanted to come back there, because they always done well. And we done real well the first time we went in there. And it was a great town. The guy out there that ran the town for us to help us was a real good guy. He was a former Prudential agent, I knew from the business. He was just a good guy. But we had a great show up there. I love that town. I'd like to go up there again sometime.
I guess the one incident there is Balls Mahoney was doing the sing.
Yeah.
And basically,
yeah, I'll tell you. Balls Mahoney, John Reckner rather. I like him, but he's had some reservations about me on his interview. But he's the biggest dipshit in the fucking wrestling business. I mean, he has his mind's up his ass. They're connected. He was doing the Brutus Singh thing where he was blowing fire. Well, all along he's been using lighter fluid, and it's basically, if you do it right, you can control it and there's not a problem. Well, this one time he changes the lighter fluid, he starts using Thompson's water sealant, which you're not supposed to make contact with your skin. Well, he's putting this in his mouth, and the shit's actually going into his mucous membranes. And he gets up in the corner, he puts the Thompson's water sealant in his mouth, and he has he goes into a trance because the shit's fucking his mind up and putting it in his mouth. Well, he goes and blows the torch, and the torch goes flying, lands on the floor, catches a guy's leg on fire, and burns a tarp up. And he's still standing up there like in a fucking trance using that shit. That was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Any other good stories from Tower City? Town of 312 people.
I wound up beating up Casati that night because he overbooked the show, and I told him I wasn't paying for the talent that he overbooked. But of course, Casati always had money on him, and he would pay the talent out of his pocket just to be friends with him. Well, Alpha Samoa was there. Alpha Simone was there. And I'm in the bathroom, and I got Casati sitting on the toilet, and I'm punching him in the face and choking him and telling him better shit $100 bills because these guys didn't want to get paid. And Alpha comes up and he's going, brother, leave him alone, don't do that to him. He said, what are you doing that for? I said, well, you might as well take over because he's going to fuck you out of your pay. So next thing you know, Alpha started smacking him around. It was funny shit. But Tower City was always a great town. It was a nice long ride up there, beautiful country, and it was a nice town.
Let's talk a little bit about Casati. I guess you talked about Gordon being a money mark.
Right. Casati spent his inheritance from his mother on wrestlers. He would pay thousands of dollars just to hang out with the boys. Like Maryland Championship Wrestling, for years, he paid for most of their talent out of his pocket and didn't get a dime from the shows because, he went out like a big shot booker, promoter. He's a sick motherfucker, real sick. Like, I was out in Vegas last year, and he had Inferno Kid and Tommy Fierro. I brought him out there, flew him out there, paid him to stay at his hotel. Well, he got they were coming out to go to a banquet where I was receiving an award from the Mullahs Group for Top Independent Promoter of the Year. And they called me at the funeral, scared that he had him in the room, he wasn't going, he had a gun. So, somehow they were able to sneak out of the room, and they brought the police back with them to get their stuff. And when he came to the room, Casati answers the door. I was standing right there, he had a towel around his waist, and he had shaving cream all over his face except for his eye slots. It reminded me of like Apocalypse Now, Martin Brando. It was like the most bizarre fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you could tell stories about him forever. Like his mom died one time. Well, his mom died. Well, the time, not the one time. The time his mom died. We used to call her up and crank call her before she died. You know, me and Donnie B and my son. Well, the time she died, we had a show up in Yardville, and Casati was up on a stage doing an interview, kind of promo, and Donnie B had the cordless microphone. He's in the back in the locker room going, "Hello, Tommy. This is your mom. Where's my money?" And he's looking up in the air like, where the hell's his voice coming from that mimicked his mom so good? It was Donnie B. It was fucking hilarious, you know. But there's a million stories you can tell about this son of a bitch. He's like the biggest scumbag.
Any other ones come to mind with Casati?
Just that he's probably, I've never, with the exception of maybe, well, not even Gino Moore. More people hate Tom Casati than anybody in the wrestling business. He just totally disappeared off the face of the earth. I think he pissed all his mom's inheritance away, and you know, he was out in Vegas living at the YMCA last time I heard.
Good for him. You did a few shows out in the Minnesota area. I guess 2 or 3 shows.
Right.
Tell us your thoughts on like how you got hooked up going to there.
Well, what happened was, as you know, Sean Waltman, X-Pac, he had just, Global just went under, and he was basically doing nothing. I mean, he was sitting on his ass, no one was using him, and I started bringing him in on a regular basis. And while he was out here, he said, "Why don't we do a show in Minnesota?" He said, "I can hawk a lot of tickets, get guys out there to help you promote it, we get Eddie Sharkey involved." And I said, "Yeah, we'll try it one time." So there was like an Indian center we had a show at, and the main event was Terry Funk against Hawk. And there was just some great matches on that show. Sabu and 1-2-3 Kid, they had the greatest match ever in independent wrestling. That was like one of the biggest top tape sellers of all time. And I had Saito from Japan there. I had a whole bunch of guys from Minnesota.
Brad Reagans.
Yeah, Brad Reagans was there. Who the hell else was there? It was just it was a super card. It was unbelievable. And I brought Taz out there, Candido. I'm trying to think who else I brought from out there. I remember I brought Taz and Candido out there, and it was just a super show. It was the Indian Center. It was unbelievable. And after that, that was when me and Eddie Sharkey were sending tapes to the WWF, and kind of like we had WWF people at that show, and they fell in love with X-Pac, and then the rest of that, that's history, you know. We had Jerry Lynn out there. I was using all these guys before anybody was using them.
I guess on your second or third show, you did Lynn versus Sabu.
Yeah, that was the second show.
Okay.
That was the Eddie Gilbert Hawk, which Eddie done the best interviews in wrestling. He was the fucking king of interviews, Eddie Gilbert. He was like great, unbelievable. Matter of fact, I wish Doug was on TV, because Doug Gilbert does great interviews too. I mean, if you see me shows cutting promos, you can tell he was trained by the master, you know. But it was Sabu and Jerry Lynn, and it was funny because Jerry Lynn put his shot on the whole match. Then after the show, Sabu went up to him in the locker room, and we kind of like had to stand between them, because he said to Jerry Lynn something like, "Hey brother, this business is a fucking work. What the fuck you're trying to do to me?" And Sabu was like, you know, he had a couple cuts and shit on him, and nothing other than normal, but just that, you know, Jerry Lynn didn't help the situation at all. But Jerry's a great athlete. I love Jerry. I haven't seen him in a long time.
What are your funnest memories of doing the shows out in Minnesota? And why did it just end? It ended when Sean Waltman.
Yeah, Sean left, and there was really nobody. I mean, Eddie Sharkey was a great guy. I enjoyed doing business with him, but it was just like, when you have shows that far away from your home, you can't control things unless you have someone there that you can really put a leash on. And me and Sean had like a father-son relationship, and I knew I could count on him to do stuff out there. The thing about Minnesota is, people in Minnesota are as nice as anywhere in the world. They're probably just nicer than people from Tennessee. And I just love being out there. The people were great. A lot of Native Americans out there were real friendly to us, and it's just it's a great town, except for Prince, you know.
I guess another controversial incident that happened when you were doing the NWA was right before they did the WWF NWA gimmick. Reckless Youth, I guess you and him had some kind of disagreement.
Yeah, the problem
What's your
is,
side of the story?
okay, the problem is that when you're in the wrestling business and you have a promoter that's paying the bills, when you're told to do something and he's paying you, you just do it. He got pissed because I put him in a steel cage match with Devin Storm. And I love Tom Carter. He's probably one of the top 5 guys out there as far as an indie guy I consider. But Tom's problem was he always thought that the business was a shoot. You know what I'm saying? And me and him just started having differences of opinion. And then he told me one day, you know, he said, look, I'm thinking about quitting. I don't know if I want to work for you anymore. I said, well, you don't have to. You're fucking fired. It was just that, you know, he got in this mental frame, which really about, we see each other now, we're best of friends. I like Tom Carter, and I would use him in a minute. You know, he's a great star, but he just needed to kind of like grow up a little bit. Unfortunately, I should have taken the Billy Real route with him, you know what I mean? But I didn't. But he's kind of like a little bit humble now, I guess.
Another incident, ECW starts working with the WWF. They bring in Waller and Cornette.
Right.
I guess you got to drive the limo that night.
I got the what?
No, you were in the limo. I guess that was one of the deals that, like...
The deal was, here's the deal. Cornette didn't want to do it because he knew it was loyalty to me. But we got talking, he said, I just want to run it by you. The deal was Cornette would get a fat paycheck, and he got a ton of money that night. He didn't want to do it. The other deal was that Heyman would have to pick him up and me up in a limo and take us to dinner. And it was like one of the greatest eating feats ever by me and Jim Cornette, because he took us to Morton's Steakhouse in Philly. And we sat there like 4 hours prior to the show. I mean, we were eating lobster, New York strip, 4 and 5 appetizers each. We were drinking bottled imported water, and at the end of the night, the guy comes around with a humidor and he says, "You like a cigar?" I says, "Oh, these are my favorites." They were Monte Cristos, so I grabbed about 7 of them. And I said, "This is great, you get a complimentary cigar after dinner." He goes, "Oh no," he says, "you got to pay for these." I said, "Well, put them on Heyman's bill." But by the time we got done eating with the tip, everything came to $600. And I went to the arena, Jimmy whacked Tommy Dreamer with a tennis racket and walked out there with a shitload of money. And then they were supposed to give me full access to their town if I wanted it. And I never used it though. I just wanted to see fucking Paul Heyman grovel a little bit, you know.
You're continuing to sell shows, and I guess we'll have to pray.
We never really sold that many shows. Our shows we promoted ourselves where we would give the sponsor so much on each ticket.
Okay.
But you know, if they didn't have a certain amount of tickets sold weeks prior to the show, we would cancel, which we didn't do many cancellations. Because me and Joe Panzarino were packing places. I mean, we were selling out every building we were going into. And we had some good talent. I mean, we had Venus and Snow and David Heath, and we had a ton of draws. We had access to the big giant guy. What's his name? Silva. I mean, we just had so much WWF talent available to us that we were packing buildings.
You had many guys like right-hand guys who brought up through business. I guess somebody that you treat like a son was Tommy Fierro.
Yes. Tommy. To this day, there's actually people that think I'm Tommy Fierro's father.
There's a resemblance.
Oh yeah.
Just during this time, WWF is pulling at some of the guys on the shows last minute, and somebody writes a letter to Meltzer, somebody from your locker room, quote unquote.
Right.
And you assume that it's
Tommy Fierro, right. Because I was told by someone who I trusted that the person in the position that should never lie, and he kept telling me all kinds of proof it was Fierro, so I believed him because I think this guy would ever lie, and he turned out to be one of the biggest liars in the wrestling business. But I had a falling out with Fierro over that, but we're fine now. We're best of friends, and Tommy's great. I told Tommy I was Tommy's mentor. You know, I told him how to scam and scheme and do all the shit necessary to be a successful wrestling player, and he'll tell you that. You know.
Did you ever find out who wrote the letter?
Yeah, I think I did find out, but I don't have the concrete proof it was him, so I'd rather not say who it was.
That's fine.
I don't want to get these guys sued.
Yeah, thanks.
They could sue me because I don't give a fuck, but you know.
I guess near the end of it down, Tommy does his own thing. You're still promoting the NWA.
Right.
It's like 99.
Right.
You guys start complaining, paychecks are bouncing and stuff like that. Any truth to that?
No, we talking about for the boys.
Yeah.
That never happened. Yeah, the only it happened years ago with one guy got a bad check and it was that fucking idiot Ralph Soto. He's the only one we ever had a problem with a check, and he's a fucking goof.
You paid him?
Yeah, we actually had to fucking pay him $15. Fucking piece of shit.
Should have kept the 50.
He's one of the 5 guys. I'll give you my top 5. He's one of the 5 biggest shit stains in the professional wrestling. Ralph Soto.
On that note, let's give your 5 biggest, what you would like to call pieces of shit in the business.
You gotta start.
No particular
My
order.
opinion now. My opinion. Number 1, without a doubt. Number 1, Gino Moore. If you talk, this is my opinion now. It's nothing to do with Smart Market Video. If you took a big 6 foot, 500-pound pile of shit and mated it with Jabba the Hutt, you would get Gino Moore. He's a pathetic, disgusting, lying piece of shit. And he tells people he's been to Japan 56 times. His story, he would rather climb a fucking tree and tell a lie than stand the ground and tell the truth. He smells, he's fat, he's just a pathetic human being. If you look at his, from the neck up, he wears this wig that 25 years ago, did you ever see this like fucking roadkill that lays on the side of the road for about 6 weeks? And then, like, when it's finally down to its last leg, it's like flat as a thin piece of paper. Well, he scraped it off the road and took it to the dry cleaners. He staples his hat to the top, like I compare him right to that masked wrestler Super Callow, who always has the hat stuck to his fucking hood. Well, that hat and that ratty ass fucking wig is always stuck to the top of his head. This guy's the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest fucking liar in the wrestling business, storyteller. I mean, hey Gino, I know you're gonna see this. I seen the fucking film. It's your biggest laugh ever in your life.
Number 2.
Tom Casati. Tom Casati is the exact alter ego of Gino Moore. In fact, that as dirty as Gino Moore is, Tom Casati is clean. Because like Tom Casati, when he was in Vegas, everybody tells us he's got like a clean fetish. Like when he takes a shower, he'll use a whole bar of soap. He'll go through 200 Q-tips. He dries himself off with paper towels instead of a towel. I mean, he uses a whole tube of toothpaste at a time to brush his teeth. And he's really a fucking anal prick. But he's a big piece of shit.
Number 3.
Zandik from CZW is another piece of shit. If he didn't have his own promotion, he wouldn't even be working. He's a star in Japan. I know what they're paying the boys over there because I talked to somebody in the office. Some of the boys have to eat at the 7-Eleven over there because they're already getting paid shit, and they come back with no money in their pocket. Matter of fact, one of the workers' girlfriends was telling me that they were getting virtually no money, that he couldn't even bring her back a fucking t-shirt. So they got this big thing. What it is if you took Big Japan is one of the worst promotions over there if you know anybody follows Japanese wrestling. And they get their few hundred people. They're just like a lousy Jersey independent promotion, but they're in Japan. So right away you go to Japan, you think, oh wow, it's great, but they ain't shit. You know, they just want they needed some American suckers to beat up on, and they went right to fucking Seoul, New Jersey, and found them. Who else?
Number 4.
Uh, Jeff Miller, the Metal Maniac. A lying fucking piece of shit. He ripped my nephew off. My nephew took him off the street. And my nephew's friends with the Iron Sheik, and that's how I met Jeff Miller. He was living in his car, and he took Jeff Miller off the street and let him stay at his house and fed him and gave him a place to stay. And while he was there, a month before he left, he racked up an $800 phone bill with calls to Hawaii, and still to this day has yet to pay my nephew any money. You know, he's a piece of shit.
Do you got any pictures of the clown?
Do I have any pictures of him?
Yeah. Take a picture with the clown.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Let me think who else is out there. There's so many, there's probably 100 of them, but they're like 4 of the,
One more. Round out your top 5.
around my top 5. Wait, I'm looking about promoters and, so we got Gina Moore, Casati, Jeff Miller,